You're listening to the Fix the Money, Fix the World show
on the Bitcoin Made Simple Podcast Network.
Here's your host, Luke Mikic.
Welcome back, guys, and thanks for tuning in to Bitcoin Breadcrumbs, where Cory and I are going to bring you all the latest news and events in the Bitcoin and broader macroeconomic space. This one is a little bit longer because lots of things happened in Bitcoin and around the world this week. We touched on the CPI inflation hitting 6.2%, which is actually the highest inflation print over the past 30 years. We also took a look at why the CPI is a lie. We looked at lots of different charts and graphs from a bunch of different websites that expose the CPI for what it really is. So if you guys are listening in on the podcasting platforms like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, be sure to head over to the YouTube channel where you can see the video footage of what we're discussing. Be sure to go and subscribe over there as well on the Bitcoin Made Simple YouTube channel. Because we have been doing lots of video related podcasts of late, I suppose. We also touched on the rumors around Zimbabwe and whether they are potentially posturing to make Bitcoin legal tender, because there's lots of rumors about Zimbabwe. So we took a little bit of a look into that. But I really hope you guys are going to enjoy this show. Before we jump into it, we should hear from today's show sponsor, who is Coinbeast. Do you guys have questions about Bitcoin? Personalize your learning and book a one-on-one video call with a Bitcoin Pro on Coinbase Connect. You can learn about mining, security, the Lightning Network, taxes, and many other topics. It's really easy. Choose your topic and pro, select a date when you're available, and bring your questions to the meeting room. Book your first call today by going to coinbase.com and clicking on the Connect tab. Be prepared for the financial revolution and get the knowledge you need.
All right, take two and action. That's you keep that part in there. Keep it in. It's all natural. We started talking, for those that are listening, and then we realized that we had something screwed up. So fortunately, we were only like 2 minutes in. Yeah. So we'll just start over again and make it really natural. I
was thankful we were only 2 minutes in. We got in and we realized I couldn't share my screen because we wanted to show you guys the big news of the week. With the 6.2% manipulated CPI inflation in the United States, which is the highest inflation print in over 30 years, Cory.
And that's what they're telling you.
Yeah.
That's what they're telling. By the way, how about that guy on Jack? So I forget what tweet it was that Jack had put out, and I said something like, remember like not too long ago, just a week ago, people were saying it was dangerous for Jack to say that hyperinflation was a possibility. And that one guy that kept commenting, I think you even replied to him, and I was like, this guy is the most NGMI. Like, he's the most not gonna make it in the history of the world. Like, and there's just people that don't get it. Like, if you think 6% is hyperinflation, then I've got some bad news for you. It's not. And it's like, well, first of all, I didn't say we're in hyperinflation at the moment. It's like we're prepping for it.
Yeah.
And second of all, you really think that 6%, what was it, 6.2%? Yep. You think 6.2% is the real number? Like, if you double the money supply in a 12-month span, and they're going to come out with real numbers, just like they come out with real statistics about everything else. Like, give me a break.
Well, here's the real numbers, Cory. This is shadow stats, and all shadow stats does is it simply measures the way that governments used to measure inflation themselves. So for anyone who's watching on the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast YouTube channel,
so, counting poultry and
yeah. So this covers everything. So the listeners won't be able to see the charts we're looking at, but jump over on YouTube and you'll be able to see that when you measure the way governments used to measure inflation, inflation's actually approaching 15%. But obviously, we know that the US government manipulated the CPI basket in the late 80s and 90s. So that's why your manipulated government-approved inflation index will tell you that inflation is only 6.2%.
So they started manipulating in 1986, and I'm gonna pretend like I know why, and you tell the audience why. that happened and what happened, and I'll just pretend to learn along with them because I definitely know this.
Of course you do. I know you do. Essentially, if inflation's low, central banks can print money out of the wazoo, and everybody knows that when you increase the money supply, that disproportionately benefits the people who hold all the assets. Because naturally, if the Fed is buying assets, so that's mortgage-backed securities and bonds, that artificially inflates the stock market and the housing market. So naturally, the people who have all their wealth in these assets, like stocks and the housing market, they benefit from the inflation. Like house prices are compounding at 10 to 15% per year. Meanwhile, your wages are compounding at 2% per year. So that's where the theft is. Your wage is going up by 2% a year. Your savings are losing value by 10% a year. And the price of everything that you want to buy, stocks and home prices, is going up at 20% a year.
So what you're saying is, and I mean, so when that chart that you were just looking at, where it showed, I mean, when did they change the way they measured it, inflation?
So that was in the 80s and the 90s. It was
And
also
how did they do it? Just from money printing, or did they stop counting certain things in the like? Did they take out, like, how the whoever that dumbass was that was like, inflation doesn't really it's not that bad if you take out the price of things that you buy. Like I think he said something like, you take out the price of like poultry and meat. Like, oh geez, go, thank God we don't buy, nobody buys that, because I mean,
yeah, you
terrible.
nailed it. That Democratic guy the other week. If you take out
Oh.
poultry, meat, eggs, and fish, inflation's a little bit more in line with historical averages. But yeah, it's in
I mean,
the 80s
like,
and
how stupid do they think we
Oh.
are? Like, that's what kills me. I mean, we'll get into the techno side. But how stupid do they think we are? Like, I can't believe that they actually come off and say this shit. And they just go like, if you take, I mean, seriously, it's like a comedy skit. If you take out the price of gasoline, cars, air, water, natural, like anything you need to live, if you take out those prices, then inflation is not that bad. It's actually zero. Like, it's cost zero to have grass, like, but no, they're gonna, sorry, it just drives me nuts.
Me
It's
too,
like, how
dude.
insane is that? It's insane. And like, I can't believe there's people that don't, like, nobody, just look around in normie world and people aren't like alarmed by this. Like, that doesn't, if I wasn't a Bitcoiner, I would have, that's something, a statement like that would make me cash in and go ape into Bitcoin immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. The gaslighting is wild. I think the things they changed in the 80s and 90s was home prices. So home prices, or just the cost of living, that constitutes or makes up like 30% of the entire CPI basket. And what they did was they swapped out measuring the actual price of a home. So if homes are increasing by 10% a year, that means that 30% portion in the CPI is increasing at 10% a year. But what they did was, instead of actually measuring the price of homes going up, they changed it to what's called owner's equivalent rent survey or something like that. So they would survey a certain small handful of homeowners and say, how much do you think the rents are going to increase in your area next year? So obviously they'd be very selective of what surveys they take.
Well, that's really accurate. That is some great statistics right there. I mean, wow. These are the people that we're supposed to trust. This is a science, right? They're collecting data, and we're supposed to trust the science. So, I mean, that's great. That's great. Like, that's like going around and asking people, like, how much do you think it would cost to rent a car at Enterprise Car? Like, I don't know. I mean, like $20 a day. Like, in the, like, okay, well,
Exactly.
that's our official inflation. Then you said it. Like, Jesus,
That's
God.
exactly what it's like. Trust the science. Trust the science, Cory. So yeah, essentially the owner's equivalent rent. I think when home prices went up 20% last year, the actual owner's equivalent rent only went up something like 2%. So that's where the theft is. And there's other things as well. So
What a joke.
yeah, such a joke. And of course, they do all sorts of other crafty things, like they swap out the price of steak to hamburgers, and they say, "Oh no, no, no! Just ignore the fact that that really good quality steak went up by 50% last year. We're going to swap that out for hamburgers. You can still get a similar sized serving of hamburgers, which is a red meat. So we're going to count that in, and shows that the price is actually deflating." They've got all sorts of little crafty tricks up their sleeves.
Well, and so a little anecdote about meat not all being the same. We all know that. Um, but this is my like fiat guilty pleasure. My unhealthy guilty pleasure is it like every once in a while, once every couple months, I will go to Taco Bell and I just go ham on Taco Bell. Like it's like my wife's just like she's like, you're going to Taco Bell, there goes $15-$20. Like it's just gonna be gone. I'm gonna feel awful afterwards, probably feel bad for like days. And then and yeah, but I go ham. And so the area that we're moving to, there isn't a Taco Bell. So like I don't know, I have to find a Taco Bell for my like quarterly fix. And but the reason there's not a Taco Bell there is because the like area does not allow people to serve below a certain grade of meat. Like
Oh,
it has to be like grade C meat or higher, and Taco Bell can't be there because they serve grade D meat and below.
that's interesting. I didn't know that. Um,
Yeah,
Speaking of
yeah, it's
grade
like
C, um, as soon as you said grade C, my eyes got fixed on the word soy, US soy. We're looking at a
ooh,
chart here of
soy's
the,
going up.
yeah, of course it is. Soy's going bananas. So we're looking at a chart of year over year increases in a bunch of commodity prices. So again, the governments are telling you inflation's only 6%. Let's look at the actual statistics. Lumber, 160%, US soy, 130%, corn, which is in most of your food, 100%, oil, gas, 90%, gasoline, 80%, heating, 80%. It's absolutely wild. It really doesn't look anything like 6% inflation to me, Corey.
No. Um. So, what did they take out to get to 6% inflation?
Oh,
I mean,
okay. So
they
they do the substitutes. We talked about with the meat and the steak, and they do all sorts of things. Like instead of having things like really nice chicken breast, if the chicken breast goes from $10 to $15, a 50% increase in 1 year, they would say, okay, 50% increase. How about we take that out because there was a storm at a chicken farm that impacted the supply chain. So we're going to ignore that and we're going to say, okay, it cost you $10 for a bit of chicken last year. Well, you can still get chicken necks or chicken wings for $10. So 0% inflation. They do the same thing with the hamburgers, the steaks. They did the same thing in the 1970s. In the 1970s, obviously, that was the decade with the most inflation in the US's history. Year over year inflation in the 70s, it was like 10% per year for the entire decade. So, really, really big inflation. That was because we went off the gold standard in 71.
and
But
then the petrodollar came and saved us.
yeah, saved us. We went and supported a militia in the Saudi Arabians. But yeah, it's in the 70s, the Fed chair actually removed 75% of the entire CPI basket from what was in there at the beginning of 1970 versus what was in there at 1980. 75% of the basket got removed. So they'd fuck around with the energy costs and they'd fuck around with the food, and there'd be a storm in a banana farm and they'd completely take all food out of the CPI basket. It's absolutely predatory. And
Well, it's amazing because it just sums up. I talk to people all the time about the media, but it's amazing the way that they frame things. The way, and I mean that framing in like the camera angles and everything. amazing how they do these things and the way it affects your perception. So with something as simple as data, they just take it out. They nobody looks nobody looks beyond the headline. They see 6% inflation. Like, okay, yeah, that seems like it's more, but I mean, it is going to absolutely rip here at some point.
I couldn't agree more. The gaslighting is what annoys me the most. Again, for the listeners, I've pulled up another article on screen here. And no, I'm not joking. The title is Inflation is Good for You. Don't panic over milk prices. Inflation is bad for the 1%, but helps out almost everyone else.
That is the dumbest statement I've ever seen.
We literally
paying more
just
for your goods and services is good for you.
It's just that, like you say, the gaslighting is amazing. And
look at that guy, John Schwartz. What a jackass smirk. Like, what a look at me. I know what I'm talking about.
NGMI.
God.
That's
what
I think.
Not gonna make it, John. John, I hope you're a listener, John Schwartz, and I hope that profile picture that you have on The Intercept is a joke. I hope that you did that like kind of as a parody to make fun of The Intercept, because that's embarrassing if it's real.
Here he is.
Look at that. I know what I'm talking about. I can smile awkwardly.
NGMI. Wow,
I'm a little ripe today. I'm a little ripe today. You haven't caught that.
I like it. You're entertaining me, mate. But naturally, people have seen through this shit, Cory. And an example of that is there are rumors of Zimbabwe considering adopting Bitcoin legal tender. So this is interesting.
You texted me about this, and so what's going? I mean, is this legit? So we have a couple people. What that one article says they're denying it. I'm sure they deny, but that's a legit rumors happening.
Yeah, so this is what I wanted to pull up. The rumors have actually been circulating for a long time. So if we have a look at all these kind of articles on Zimbabwe, you can see them going back for months. So you've got one 2 months ago, there were rumors. In October, impossible to run away from cryptocurrency, said one of the top finance ministers. And then 5 days ago, one of the who was it? A top official said Zimbabwe is looking to allow quote unquote cryptocurrency as legal payment. And then obviously somebody came out 2 days ago and said, no, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. So this 2 days ago, they came out again saying they're not considering it. So there is a lot of back and forth.
Where is Jack Mallers at?
Hey,
has Jack Mallers, check his passport. Has he been stamped into Zimbabwe? That's how we know.
Yeah, I like that. Check his passport. He's been everywhere.
Just text Jack Mallers right now and say, send me a picture of you holding today's newspaper in your Chicago whatever it is that he does his zooms from, like his walk-in closet or his empty walk-in closet.
That's the best thing. I love that.
I will not have an empty walk-in closet, because that's at the new house. My wife has been waiting years for the walk-in closet that we will have, and I guarantee you I will have about this much space in that closet, and that's about it.
Let her go nuts. Let her go nuts. She can have one room, mate.
Oh no, she has the whole house. I've got the movie theater in the basement. That's about it.
Jesus. When you guys let me into the US, I'm coming to watch a movie there. Movie theater. That's amazing.
The screen's not huge. Like, I mean, we don't have stadium seating. Sounds really arrogant. But that's something like I want to do. She's like, no, we're not doing that. We'll get there eventually. But yeah, anyways, I totally derailed our conversation. The listeners are probably going to, like, I guarantee you the comments are going to be like, God, would Corey just shut up and let Luke give us some good information? So I apologize. It's late. I'm drinking, and I've also had a long day. So.
We were allowed to talk about our citadels only. And as long as every episode I say real estate is a shit coin, you can get away with it. The listeners be okay. Stack sats, plebs. Stack sats, not houses. People who are stacking houses, I suppose, could be China. This is something else I look at that kind of indicates that inflation isn't going to be transitory. So everybody knows
and when they say transitory, what do they mean by that? For dumb people that might not know.
I said the Fed thinks when they say transitory, they say, oh, no. Inflation's just going to go up for a couple of months and then it's going to come back down to zero. Prices.
Just meaning it's a transition. It'll
pass. It'll pass. They'll go up and then they'll stay there. They won't go up anymore. Inflation will stop. But obviously that's wrong. That's what they said in early 2020 when they printed trillions. They said, no, this won't cause inflation. 6 months later, we got inflation. They said, don't worry, it'll only be transitory. 6 months later of high inflation, they're now saying, oh, it could hang around for a little bit longer, but here's why it's good for you. Looking at that article earlier. But so China is a really leading indicator. Obviously, China manufactures things for the rest of the world. And that's kind of a reason that the US has gotten away a lot with their inflation recently. They pretty much gutted their manufacturing sector in the United States and they offshored all of that manufacturing to China after they got allowed into the World Trade Organization in the 90s. Because China, obviously, they manufacture everything and they pay their workers pretty much slave labor, like really, really, really cheap. I don't know, $5 an hour. I'm not sure the figures, plebs, so don't quote me on that.
I'm sure it's much less. I'm sure it's less than that.
Yeah. And that's why our goods and services have been relatively cheap for the past 20 or 30 years, because China's been producing them cheaply. But now China's PPI, so that's the producer price index, is actually also hitting its highest levels for 30 years. And there's lots of reports coming out of companies in China that they're raising prices the highest they have in a long time. And this is actually, so in the blue, you're looking at the China's PPI. So that's the producer price index. And then the red line is the CPI. So that's the consumer price index. You can see they generally move in lockstep, these lines. And you can generally see that most of the time, a large spike in the PPI, the producer price index, that generally leads to an increase in the CPI. And this is actually the largest gap between the two lines that we've ever seen, indicating that Chinese inflation is probably about to pick up.
And the further that spread gets, the more that rubber band it gets stretched, and it's gonna launch that. Same with what goes on with the Bitcoin price. I think we're like oscillating here in this 65K range, and it's like I feel like the longer that happens, it's gonna just be a slingshot getting pulled further and further and further. So anyways,
I couldn't agree more. I think it's really healthy that we're just consolidating here at all-time highs. Bitcoin's kind of been a little bit boring, hasn't it? Hasn't done much in a week or two.
Bitcoin itself has been boring. The Bitcoiners have not been boring.
Bitcoiners are never boring.
No.
Twitter Spaces.
I can't keep up. I'm like barely able. I'm just so like up to my eyeballs and stuff with the house and business and everything that like I've actually had to take a knee and just and let these Twitter conversations pass me by, because I'm like there's no way I'm gonna be able to keep up right now.
Yeah, I don't see you in Spaces as much as normal. Actually.
Yeah, I've probably dropped off over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I'll come back, but
it's hard to keep up. Definitely.
I don't know how people have the you have to have pace. You have to have an endurance and stamina to keep going in those. I'm like, so anyway, so what are we looking at? Zero hedge now?
Always on zero hedge. I'm an addict. But I think that's just about everything. The energy crisis is something that everybody should be watching. Natural gas prices up 400% in the Eurozone and UK, and that's why electricity prices have doubled in the Eurozone, especially in places like Spain. That's something that I recommend the plebs should be watching. Like in China at the moment, we were just talking about Chinese manufacturing and the producers over there. The CCP is actually making them ration the electricity at the factories. So they're actually saying, look, you can only turn your power on for 1 week, then you need to turn it off the next week. You can't produce anything. So obviously that's just going to impact the supply chains even more than it is now. If China, who's the world's largest manufacturer, isn't producing the same amount of goods and services, combine that with the fact there's a shit ton more money out there chasing the goods and services, you know what that's going to do to the price of things.
I mean, you would almost think that this is a coordinated, concerted effort. Um, it seems a little. What are the odds? Oh, you got your tinfoil hat right there.
Tinfoil hats on.
I mean, you know, what? I mean, that's really convenient. I mean, what a crazy timing that this all happened.
It's
It's
nearly
nuts. I can't believe that.
too perfect, isn't it? It's nearly too
I
perfect.
know. It's like if they could have sat down over the last couple of decades and mapped this out, it couldn't have gone better for them.
The one
That's if they
thing,
could have done that, but they would have never done that. And if they did, they would have told us.
yeah, the energy crisis is definitely shooting them in the foot. Like they're trying to move away from coal and oil, natural gas sources. They're trying to move to all these unreliable renewables like wind and solar. And that's obviously like Europe's probably the country that's bent the knee the most to the renewable climate
Mm-hmm.
hysterics. And they're obviously the ones that are suffering the most with those electricity prices absolutely soaring 100% year over year.
I'll, I'm not, you know, this get me in trouble with some people, um, but I don't give a shit about climate change. I
Yeah.
care about my environment. It's
Mm.
like I don't want to pollute. I don't want to leave trash about. I don't want, you know what I mean? Like create waste. But I don't see it as the threat that people think that it is. Um and what really was eye opening to me was just seeing what like, you know, they've tricked us into thinking that carbon is bad for the world. And then it's like, well, shit, we're made of carbon. Like everything is made of carbon. Human beings are made of carbon. Um, and then, you know, whenever you dig into like the fact that, you know, why in the, you know, Jurassic periods and stuff, why were the plants so much bigger? Because they had higher CO2 concentration. You know what I mean? Like, and what really I think should be alarming for people should be the fact that, like, how insane is it that Bill Gates is like, I want to block the sun, and it's like, I think that sun is pretty important. Like, I'm pretty sure for, I don't know, the 4 effing billion years that this planet has been here, or whatever it is, that you know, everybody, like, plants survived and everything like that. They can't pinpoint any cataclysmic event that they try to point back. Nothing comes from, oh, the dinosaurs were driving too many cars. That's not why they like they went extinct. It's like they're like, the best we can come up with is that you know, an asteroid hit the earth and killed everything on it. You're like, okay, well, what did that do? And they're like, well, you know, a cloud of dust to block the sun. It's like, oh, block the sun like the way Bill Gates wants to block the sun? Is that what you're talking about? Like the same thing? That's weird. Crazy.
How wild is
You telling me that flubby ass wants to block the sun, and he's the picture of health, so I should listen to him because he knows what he's talking about. That's how arrogant, like, humans are just so arrogant in thinking. We think that we have such a greater impact on our environment around us than we actually do. And we're like, I can't believe we're doing all these things. And it's like, I think George Carlin, the comedian, said it. It was like, Mother Nature will be fine. It's humans that are the problem. Like, don't worry about Mother Nature. Mother Nature will just get rid of you if you're too much of a nuisance.
Couldn't agree more. I need to
Anyways.
co-sign everything you just said on Kill Bill. That's what I call him, Kill Bill Gates. Stay away from him. Stay away from his needles. Stay away from his bug burgers. Don't go near any of them. He's the epitome of soy, Bill Gates.
That's what I was just gonna say. He is soy. He is like the definition of soy. Like, if you just if instead of they have like bobblehead dolls, they need to make like a Bill Gates wobble belly, like just like where you shake him and his soy belly just like jiggles back and forth.
I think this is probably the most entertaining weekly breadcrumbs that we've left out there for the plebs.
Good news is it's probably just going to keep getting more ripe as time goes on.
Let's do it. I like it. This is probably the last chart we've got for you today, guys, but we're just talking about climate change. And I remembered this chart here. I think this is, what is this one? A 4,000-year chart of temperatures. And you can see that absolutely nothing has changed. This is just a natural 500-year warming and cooling cycle that the Earth goes through. A lot of people say, no, the 1 degree temperature change over the past 170 years was man-made. It was man-made from the Industrial Revolution. It could be. Some of it certainly could be attributed to that. But as you can see, these kind of spikes in temperatures is absolutely nothing out of the ordinary. The plebs listening in on the podcasting apps, again, go check us out on YouTube. We're looking at all the charts. We're roasting Bill Gates. You can see that this is absolutely nothing out of the ordinary, and it's actually making lower highs all the way down. So
it's almost like this system was designed by a higher power to work in this way where it regulates itself. It's crazy that would be the case. And I can't remember if I've done this on Breadcrumbs, but I've done it in Spaces before. And my friend that is enlightened me to some things that are quite interesting. This is something that actually turned my friend from an atheist back to like a believer in God and everything. But like, we're talking about it's actually natural for the earth to for the waters in the oceans to recede and the ice caps to get thicker, and that's possibly where Atlantis really is, because Atlantis, people think it's this mythical thing, but it actually, I think it was Plato was talking to like the priests in Egypt that were like telling the stories of this like city that have been passed down for like thousands of years. So like Atlantis is a real thing. It's probably buried in the oceans right now, and it's not because they were driving SUVs around. It's because the earth amazingly goes through these natural cycles, as if, boy, we just can't wrap our heads around the fact that maybe we don't have control over this rock that is flying through space in a perfect orbit around the sun at the perfect distance that gives us the perfect living conditions that we live in to give us this beautiful planet. But we can't. No, like we are effing it up because we are driving too many cars. We're driving too many cars. Everybody stop what you're doing. I'm not going to rant on that anymore.
It's absurd. It's all absurd, honestly. People think they can control everything. It's honestly absurd.
It's the biggest lesson, like, honestly, for humans is to like understand that you can't have control. And like something I'm learning as a parent, that's something my dad told me. But when you become a parent, it is a never ending it's a never ending cycle of you having to let go of your kids. Like, you let them go further and further, because when they're born, they're completely dependent on you. And then they start to move, so you don't have to carry them everywhere, and then they start to be able to get their own food and all that kind of stuff. And just it's gut wrenching for parents, because as much as we want them to grow up and be independent, you still want them to be right there with you. So yeah, it's just I don't know. I don't even know how I got there.
You were giving Bill Gates some advice. You were saying, listen,
Yeah.
Bill, you can't father this planet.
Yeah, you can't control everything.
Yeah,
You
you can't.
control everything. You just gotta let go. You got
to let go. You got to look at the 6.2% inflation print. You got to understand that the governments are pissing in your face and telling you it's raining, and you got to opt out. You can't control that fucked system.
some salty rain.
Yeah, that's salty.
Some bitter rain.
I think that's just about everything, though, brother. What do you reckon?
What about Zimbabwe? You said something about, or no, Zimbabwe. The 150 trillion.
Ooh,
What was that?
yeah. So at this COP, I don't even know what it stands for, but this global climate hysteria meeting that they held this week in, I think it was Glasgow, but they essentially outlined a plan for how much money they're going to have to print to save the planet, Corey. Save the planet. And they reckon over 30 years, they're going to have to print $150 trillion. 150 trillion cuck bucks is what they're going to have to print to save
Over
the planet.
how many years?
30.
Wow. I mean, they're really undercutting themselves. They're going to print a lot more.
So when they say banks and investors race to fund the $150 trillion net zero push,
of course they do.
What they mean is that money's going to be extracted from the productive lower and middle class economy, probably for inflation. But just remember, more hypocrisy on display. These people are coming out saying we need to use less energy and less oil, and they all arrive there on their own little private jets, burning and guzzling oil. But of course, it's a different set of rules for them, Corey.
Yeah. Oh, so one thing I wanted to ask you about, because I had jumped into a space that you were in, and I heard you talking a little bit about the percentage of money in these stimmy checks that went out in the U.S., where it was like $1,200 went to you as like bread and circuses to distract you, but like in reality, how that was so disproportionate to how it went to the elites and everything.
Yeah, so I think obviously we've done more and more printing since. I think I just used the rough number of the first bailout in 2020, so early 2020. I can't remember if the CARES Act was 2.2 trillion or 3 trillion. I just used $3 trillion for the maths. So you take the total amount of money printed, $3 trillion, and I just divided that by the rough amount of Americans there are out there. Is there about 330 million of you guys?
Yeah. Yep.
So I went 3 trillion divided by 330 million, and it comes out to be $9,000 per person. So if all of that $3 trillion was printed equally, that means every single person in America should have received $9,000. But of course, what did the everyday person get in America? They got a $1,200 stimmy. So then you've got to kind of ask yourself the question, right, where did that other $7,800 go per person? Of course, it all went to the bankrupt banks. It all went to the bankrupt corporations. It all went to the 30% of the S&P 500 who are operating as zombie corporations. That's money printing for you. But of course, they don't tell you that in the news. They say, look at all this we're doing for you. We're giving you a $1,200 stimulus check. It's all about you and looking after the unemployed. It's all about you looking after the business owner who lost his home. But they don't tell you about where the other $7,800 per person goes. And that obviously gets funneled through the bankrupt banking institution, and people who are savers and living on pensions and 401ks. They cop 100% of that inflation. They cop that entire $9,000 per person in debasement of their savings. Whenever the money supplies increase, it devalues the currency equally. So It's absolute theft. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Good thing they have our best intentions. Because they. Oh, let's see. Yeah, what's the low end of this projection is going to be? Oh, I mean, yeah, it's 666. What are the odds?
What a surprise.
What are the odds? Huh?
So even
It's
on
like
that
they're
low
evil
end,
or something. Crazy.
yeah, always. Even on the low end,
Um,
you've got 6,600 per head. So obviously a $1,200 stimmy check. You've got to ask yourself, where did the other $5,400 per person go?
Not in our pockets.
So it
That is
shows,
for damn sure.
yeah. So the people are getting in the 2008 bailout. The people got 0% of the bailout. They got none of it. $700 billion
No, that
went,
didn't go to anybody. Yeah.
yeah, straight to Wall Street. And obviously that's where you had Occupy Wall Street. So this time they knew that in the bailouts they had to throw some bread. And, obviously they'd have to put on the circuses as well with the mainstream propaganda machine
They
and
didn't want
distract
people
the
in
masses.
tents.
Hey,
They didn't want people in tents, like occupying in front of these banks. Although now they don't even have to. They didn't have to get people to organize to be in tents. They're just homeless now, so they're out on the street anyways.
all their values
And
getting extracted through inflation. So for any of the plebs who are new listeners, and don't know about the
crazy,
08,
man.
hey,
Yeah, go for it. We had a little bit of a lag there, but go for it.
For any of the people who are new to macro and finance and they don't know what the 2008 global financial crisis was, when that happened and the housing market crashed by 50%, all of the homeowners, the everyday plebs like me and Cory and probably most of you guys listening, we got booted out of our homes because if we didn't have savings to pay the rest of our mortgage. Meanwhile, Wall Street and all the big banks who were leveraged up to their eyeballs in mortgages and mortgage-backed securities, they got a $700 billion bailout. And naturally, none of that went to the everyday person. This time around, they got a 1,200 stimmy, but last time in 08, they got zilch. They got zero of that $700 billion. And naturally, that led to the massive Occupy Wall Street rallies, which is what we're showing on screen, where the everyday person was pissed. They said the 99% will not be silent. So obviously our central bankers knew that they needed to throw us just 5% of the bailout money to keep us shut up a little bit.
Yep.
Um,
Well, it's crazy because with all that. So my frustration with talking about Occupy Wall Street and the mortgage-backed securities and all that credit default swaps that happened in 2008, with me going through the mortgage process right now, it couldn't be any more alarming at how messed up this system is. So just to give like general idea to people, we're getting it figured out and we'll get it taken care of. But I'm a business owner, so I pay myself what is deemed reasonable salary, and then all the profits do not show up on my W-2. And so this year's profits for my company, I'm not trying to brag, I'm just trying to explain the situation. This year's profits are phenomenal. And I can't show that to the bank. They're like, we can't trust your profit and loss statement, even though I was like, here's the profit and loss, here's the balance sheet, here's everything, and then here are all the bank statements that corroborate and verify everything I'm showing you. You can follow the entire paper trail, it's all there. They're like, yeah, we can't trust that profit until it's showing up on your taxes for next year. And I was like, well, that doesn't mean no good right now when we're closing on the house in December. That doesn't mean nothing. Like I at the earliest would have those taxes done in March or maybe late February. So it's this whole mess. And I mean, we just had to like bend over backwards and get this all figured out. Because they kept saying, they were like, well, you could put more money down on the house. And I was like, no, I'm putting down as little as possible and keeping everything else in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But the yeah, so here's how messed up the system is. And sorry if I said this before, but like it can't be underestimated or understated how um if I just was working, you could just work at a regular job. It's weird. Like, so these mortgage brokers, I'm hearing this directly, um, is that they don't, um, they just look at your pay stub. They don't want to factor in the big picture. They don't want to factor in that you have a ton of savings or that you're responsible with your money. They don't even care. You could, if your pay stubs showed that you were making X number of dollars and it met their requirements for the mortgage, it doesn't matter. You could literally, so let's just say if you were making $6,000 a month, but you were spending 8 grand a month. So you were in the hole 2 grand every month, just spending it on stupid shit, consumerism, like buying crap or whatever. But they would look at your income and they go, wow, you make $6,000 a month. Congratulations. Um, oh, look, your car payment is only X, and your the other student loans debts are only X, but here, we add in this new mortgage. Yeah, you're only at 41% or 40% of debt to income ratio. So go for it. You can have this mortgage, even though the person in real life, the person can't afford it. So they're not verifying. It's just alarming to me. They're not verifying if people can actually afford these mortgages based on their actual financial behavior.
How much do
They're
you need to put
basing it,
down?
huh?
How much do you need to put down on a home in the US?
I mean, standard is 20%. Um, I'm trying to do like 5.
Nice.
Um, just because I uh it's gonna come from Bitcoin. So like I'd rather just keep it in there. Um but yeah, it's just a crazy situation. It's like it makes me wonder, like, who is anybody steering the ship here on this, or is this gonna run aground, like, run ashore again? Because I mean, it's insane. They're not looking at how people actually spend their money. They're literally looking at one thing. They're like, hey, that checks the box. Your pay stub says you make X dollars per month, and that equates to enough money for this mortgage. And it doesn't matter that you don't put any money, like, it doesn't matter that you live to your limit every month. They don't care. And this is a part of the bigger picture, is what a guy Swan actually tweeted something about this, and I was DMing him. I was like, dude, I'm dealing with the same thing. I think he was doing something like refinancing or something, and they told him that he couldn't do it because he, was business owner, literally the scenario I just laid out. um and we were talking about it, and he said it's like they want you to be a part of the system. They want you to be in the system. They don't want you to be successful. They don't want you to go out on your own and have success and be outside of their control. Um, because, like I said, if I could spend wildly and be net zero every month, no savings, no deficit, or worse, you could have a deficit every month, and it doesn't matter to them if they look at you work at a company that pays you a standard W-2, and you've been there for a long time, and it's a company that's been around. So it's essentially slavery, that they're like, oh yeah, like, you're not saving money, life better, but we have a track record to show that for the last 5 years you've worked at this company and broke even and not improved your life. So we know that you will do whatever it takes to pay off your debts and keep paying them and keep working at the slave job, but and not buck the system and not try to get out and make your life better. And so it actually easier for people, and I'm learning that too because I keep googling it, and like I've been like reading, and if you look at how hard it is for self-employed people to get mortgages, it's really difficult. um so it's just this weird system where, like, when I was like DMing with Guy, I was like, he's like, yeah, it's like they're incentivizing you to be in the system. They're incentivized, like, hey, just get a job at some company, show some regular income, and yeah, you know what? You earned it. Go out there and spend that money. Like, go out, buy that new thing, buy that new piece of garbage made of plastic that, it was made in China with slave labor. Go ahead and buy it. Just buy that. And you deserve it. Like, you should, who cares? I mean, we can always add more debt. Like, just enslave yourself longer. Um,
Bitcoin
yeah.
fixes this. Bitcoin fixes this. It's the exact same in Australia too. People who are in the system and have an everyday working job, if it's full time, you take 3 months worth of pay slips into the bank and they'll give you a mortgage on any home they want. But if you're self-employed, you need 2 years worth of pay slips.
Yeah.
If you want the same house. So just another example of absolute bullshit. Them wanting you in the system. It's disgusting.
It's insane.
But Bitcoin fixes this.
And it go like, what I love is to, like, so you look at like a company where you work, and they're like, you have 2 months vacation or 2 weeks vacation, and that's insane. Like, that is so. I know people have to work jobs, and you got to mind your fiat. But man, if you have any entrepreneurial spirit, get out there and get out of it, because it's just insane to me. It's like they're building this perfect prison for you, where you're like, hey, you have this little, apartment. That's great. It used to be called a jail cell, but now it's an apartment. Like, all they did was add like cushions and stuff to it, and you're like, oh, this is comfy. The illusion that you live in a free world, the illusion that you're in, a free market. I think that's what's happening. I think that's the what we're coming across. What everybody's slowly identifying is that so much of what we've been fed is an illusion, and it's a lie, and people are opting out. They're done.
I think this is a good note to end the podcast on, guys. Opt out.
Really
of the illusion.
Really optimistic moment.
Yeah, you got to. There you go, plebs. You heard it. Opt out of the illusion. Buy Bitcoin. Cory and I will be back again next week. I'll be
even riper then, because I have to talk to more mortgage brokers this week. So I'll be even more raw next week. I'll probably be pretty raw between now and whenever we have moved into the new house. I'll be pretty
we'll be here
raw.
for you,
and
mate. The plebs will be
probably
here
just
for
keep
you.
coming. It'll probably just keep getting worse at that point, because then in the new house, I'm setting up a mining rig. Like, I'm going that route. I'm going full blown crazy.
We want to hear about the mining operation on the weekly show. It's requested by the plebs already.
I will tell you the mining. I'll tell you the one that I lost all the Bitcoin in the boat. That's the mining operation. The other one doesn't exist.
Exactly. There you go, plebs. Have
Thank
a boat
you so
accident.
Much, plebs.
Yeah, thanks.
Go out, go boating. Everybody go boating, and don't forget, when you stack sats, first thing you should do is get in a boat and go for a little ride.
We lost all that corn in a boating accident. Get out there, plebs. Go get a mate. Get on a boat and have a good weekend. Cory and I will see you again next week. See you guys.
See you.